want to thank everyone for joining Stable Studios every Thursday. Stable Stories every Thursday. This is episode 6. We have Drew Rogers, founding member of Stable Studios, and Zach Fowler, founding partner of Stable Studios, joining us this week. I'm really excited about this one because normally we interview individual projects that have specific use cases or insights into the stablecoin market. But this week we actually have a studio that specializes in GTM, branding, exploration of the stablecoin space. And I think that you guys, more than anyone that we've talked to thus far, kind of cover the waterfront, have a really interesting viewpoint on the entire, stable stack and the evolution of the industry. So welcome, guys. Thanks for making the time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us on, man. It's great to be
Stoked
here.
to be here.
Yeah, I love all the experiments you guys have been doing at Eco, too, on the Costco Mart, Department of Agriculture. All that stuff has been so fun.
And the branding and creative that you guys have been coming out with is really, you don't see it very often, at least yet in the industry as we grow. I've just really appreciated Eco's approach with like unleash the stables and all that stuff is really interesting.
Thank you. I would love to take credit for it. I definitely cannot. Smarter people than me came up with those ideas and put together the branding for them. But they will be very, very pleased to hear that it hit the mark, because that's what we're going for. We're trying to make it a little more engaging than maybe than what we've seen so far. So I appreciate that. Nice. Awesome. So we will try and keep this to a roughly tight 30 minutes. If we go a couple minutes over, no big deal. But basically the way we do all of our stable story episodes is we go through some generic, what was your introduction to stablecoin questions? We do a little bit of a deeper dive into Stable Studios and what you guys have been up to. And then we'll finish her off with a couple of questions either from myself or from the audience after that. So if you're good, we can jump right in. Drew or Zach, I would love to know, give the audience a bit of an idea of what Stable Studios is all about. What do you guys do, and what have you been working on?
Sure. So yeah, thanks for having us. We're really excited for this conversation. So Stable Studios it's what I'll say is it's evolving and has evolved a lot. We started this business about 6 months ago. Originally, this was just something that personally I saw a huge need around a lot of founders flocking into the space who needed help with sales, revenue, go to market, a lot of needs that especially technical founders may not be naturally super deeply gifted at. And so coming into what I started to see was the products might be incredible. The early founding like engineering team might have something really great, and even potentially capital is now in the mix when a seed or Series A is raised, and then overnight there's this massive go-to-market kind of existential crisis that often happens for founders. And so we originally thought of our business as like, hey, we really believe in stablecoins. We've been working in this space for many years, and we think that there's going to be a huge rush of innovation and founders and capital, and let's just be the best go-to-market agency and work to support founders. That was originally how I thought of this business, to be honest. Reached out to Zach to start collabing. I saw Zach at the time was running a newsletter that he can talk about that was really, really great, and was like, hey, let's go build this thing together. Let's go try to serve founders. And all of the media stuff that we did early on was really just a way to market that go-to-market agency. What we've realized in recent months is that the media itself and the content that we're coming out with independently is really, really valuable and really, really interesting for people. And we've come across what I would say is the bigger problem or the bigger need that we solve, which is stablecoin navigation, like really helping people understand the industry, who's in it, how to navigate it, how to think about it. And so some of the stuff that we're building now and how we think about ourselves revolves more around that question. of solving that navigation problem that I think we have. Zach, do you have any founding stories there?
I guess the only thing I'd want to add is in the same way that the stablecoin space right now is in this kind of transition from issuance to distribution, that's kind of the same thing. I would use that analogy where maybe issuance at first, for us was trying to have clients really trying to be in the weeds, helping them with go-to-market strategy. And then we realized actually it would be a lot more valuable if we can have a central platform where they can go and either be on the podcast, collaborate on content, if we can even just help distribute what they're bringing to the table as well as kind of the neutral third party. That's, I think we realized the space that we're just naturally starting to fit into without even really trying. And I guess it's kind of that organic bit of product market fit, if you would call it.
That makes a ton of sense. It's logical that as the industry matures and as we move toward adoption and away from more niche technical implementations, that communications platform is just so vital, right? Like getting the message out, even figuring out what the message is, and what the market is and what the market looks like and what it's responding to. We're gonna need to hone that as much as possible over the next couple of years. I definitely want to double click into that a little more, but let's take one step back. And we kind of ask everyone this question on Stable Stories is what was your first interaction with stablecoins? What got you into the space in the first place? Do you have a specific initial memory, or was there something that you remember that really made it click for you guys?
I can take that first, Drew. So my journey kind of into working into crypto professionally, I was a mortgage broker at the time. I had my license, and I just happened to be working at a company that we had partnered with Figure, and so Figure's a massive RWA. They have their own stablecoin now, but at the time, what they were doing is they had their Provenance blockchain, and they were essentially using it to process home equity lines of credit in 5 to 7 days versus a month. And even though that product didn't specifically use stable coins, it was kind of it was oh, wow, this is making my job a lot easier. Loans that were closing in 30 days and were way more expensive to do for the consumer, we were closing them in less than a week. I even did it on my house, and it was way cheaper. And then I said, okay, what happens when we take this to the next level now, where I'm not having to wait on my wire transfer to go through? But what I saw, and this is where my kind of passion for content came through, was all these 40, 50, 60-year-old loan officers, the minute they heard that this had anything to do with blockchain, they ran away. They're like, I don't understand it. And so that was where I started okay, I want to partially educate my team, but I'm just going to dip my toes into content because I knew eventually I wanted to get into this space professionally. So from there, I actually, if you go in my LinkedIn or even probably in my X, you can go find some cringy videos that I made 3 years ago talking about what is blockchain and stuff like that. But that actually helped me get my first job in the crypto space, which was at Rise, which was a fiat crypto payroll platform. And that was really when I got the opportunity to say, okay, now I can actually get paid for my my normal work in stable coins or fiat. And so I started to do that. And that was where I really started to navigate, okay, what are the on and off ramps? How can I actually manage my life with this, even as somebody in the US? Can I use things like, I forget the name of the platform, Spritz, to pay my credit cards with stable coins? Or do I want to use a stable coin funded card? Or am I going to use Coinbase off ramp? Or am I going to use something else like I use Beam a lot or Sphere? So, there's just, but at the time at Rise, that's where I really got to see, wow, we're serving people worldwide that are using stable coins, not as just crypto natives, but to pay their devs, in Ukraine or in Turkey or in the Philippines. And we're just getting, normal Web2 companies coming through. And, even though I was in a sales role at the time, creating content was the backbone of really my lead gen. And I noticed that it would be really cool to talk about payroll and how we're doing it on chain, but anytime I kind of double clicked on stable coins and having to go from either local fiat to stable coins or stable coins to local fiat, this was probably almost 2 years ago at this point, that I was like, something bigger is about to happen that I don't think most people see. So that's kind of what led into, hey, I'm going to just narrow down my career into just stable coins.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then for me, just real quick, I was at Coinbase at the time, really when USDC started blowing up. For those, I think many people still don't know how much of an foundational impact Coinbase has and still does, or had and still does on USDC. Um, I was leading sales and partnerships for the payments product at Coinbase. It was a API called Coinbase Commerce. And so I spent most of my time working with companies, helping them accept cryptocurrency as a payment method. So think, I want to pay with my Bitcoin or ETH for a luxury good or a ticket or something. When stablecoins really started making sense for me, it was actually in the payments lens, because I was pretty involved at the time when the product team really started shifting the focus from one, you see all of these issues that arise when you're thinking about crypto volatile with a volatile basis in the context of payments. You realize all of these accounting issues and merchant confusions, and we realized as the team, like, hey, volatile assets aren't the best for kind of payment methods. And so stablecoins and USDC specifically became actually how we built the product to route all crypto payments into. So if you paid with ETH or Bitcoin, all of that would be actually auto routed upon receipt into stablecoins, into USDC, so that the merchant receiving these payments wouldn't really need to worry about the volatility risk or holding these things on their balance sheet. And so I think for me, that's when it really started to click, is like, okay, this is a really interesting alternative as a payment rail, not necessarily as an asset specifically, but the payment technology that something like a stablecoin provides is really, really interesting.
Makes total sense. Yeah, both of you have sort of pedigrees that kind of touch on a question that I've been thinking about for a long time in crypto, which means like the last couple of months, I guess. But Drew, Zach, you mentioned that in your insurance role, the minute the sort of like 50-year-old seniors would hear anything related to blockchain, they'd sort of like run the other way, regardless of what increased efficiencies the tech actually promised. There's just that like there was, and I think there continues to be, a sense of like career risk associated with anything related to blockchain. And I'm wondering, from your perspective, from both of your perspective, over the last couple of years, seeing the industry evolve and coming from those backgrounds, are you perceiving a shift in that career risk from not wanting to touch anything related to blockchain to there now being a sense of career risk of not implementing these technologies in some way, especially over the last couple of months? I just think your perspective on that would be really interesting.
I mean, 100%. I think if you flash the tape back, even just 12 months or 6 months, like if you really take a step back and look at all of the extremely macro signals that have happened since, I think there are a lot of things that triggered this, but really since the Stripe announcement of the Bridge acquisition, that's one of many really key pivotal moments. Like everything that BlackRock has done with Coinbase, the new administration coming in and essentially removing all of the slaps on the wrist that the old SEC gave to most significant, most of the players who were trying to play by the rules, who were getting sued. All of that's gone. You have the White House now pretty much putting a ton of stamps of approvals on a regulatory model for things like stablecoins, and is even doing a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Like all of these things were things that we dreamed about. And it's actually, in my mind, shocking how little we don't feel more of that in the conversation. Because for me, and like 3 years ago when I was at Coinbase, if you would have said like, yeah, in 3 years the White House is going to be announcing a strategic Bitcoin reserve and the US government is going to be holding this as a treasury asset, that would blow my mind. So I think that reputational risk that you're asking about has gone down a lot because there's, in my view, there's are ample signals of others who are doing things above board and now a very regulated way.
I would just say to add on that from a content perspective and just seeing like who is engaging with our content. We're by no means a Blockworks. Maybe one day, we'll have hundreds of thousands of listeners. Um, but the quality of people wanting to get engaged in the stablecoin conversation, and not, of course, we have a strong audience of protocols like Eco and people that are in the space and wanting a central space to go to. But we have a feedback channel in our Slack, and it's there's multiple times a week where there's somebody either sliding into our DMs or responding to the newsletter after subscribing saying, hey, I'm at this large company that and I've been needing to get educated and get into the stablecoin space. Thank you for making content like that. And that's really at the end of the day who we're looking to serve. Of course, we love the crypto natives and the stablecoin natives, but we want to grow the pie and help bring these people in who are like, hey, now it's a reputation, there's a risk for me not knowing this. Where can I go? That's just this. There's no noise. I don't have to worry about, them talking about meme coins or the new AI, ZK, L2, Bitcoin subchain, whatever it is. It's just this really hyper-focused channel for what can help advance my career.
Totally. And that actually, like, that kind of dovetails into like my next thought on it, is, this shift in reputational risk among a massive industry with like probably the biggest TAM in the world that traditionally doesn't have a reputation for being able to move fast and adapt, I guess simply as a function of not having had to. As that tide changes, yesterday your financial advisor couldn't tell you to buy Bitcoin. 24 hours later, it's almost mandatory that, everyone calls up grandma and says, start buying Bitcoin. How are you seeing, like, is the industry actually more nimble? Is it equipped to adapt competently as quickly as, we all think it's going to need to? If so, like, how does that play out? If not, what do we need to do to be able to onboard that? I think I know the answer, like stable studios, obviously one solution like that, but it's just such a massive industry that almost, it seems to me overnight, is turning on to this idea of stablecoins as not just a nice to have, but table stakes, and the absolute, the massive change that needs to happen over a relatively short period of time. How does that look?
I got just a quick thought, and Drew, you could probably answer this better than I can. But I think my first take, and this is something that, coming out of COVID, we really lost touch of, which was just actually being in the same room with people, diving into the weeds on these topics. I think a lot of people, a lot of these consumer fears and even professional fears that I don't know the people behind the screen. I feel like they could get around me. Of course, it's not completely mitigated when you meet somebody face to face, but I think getting back to these really intimate, hyper focus on-site working sessions with, with the teams in the trenches and with these larger organizations, could help accelerate that. Because I can even just speak to us being able to grow at Stable Studios. The relationships that we have with people that we actually meet in person are 10 times stronger than the ones that we have only ever met virtually. And I think like Borderless has put on some great events in San Francisco and New York, kind of going back and forth. And like I said, we're kind of trying to do the same thing as well. Drew, maybe you want to speak to what's going up at StableCon. But that's just my first thought, which with how can you get this moving faster, get people in the room and get them talking face to face.
Yeah. I think this touches on the navigation problem that we have, at least for us, like we've become very passionate about this, in the journey of starting a go-to-market business focused on stablecoin founders. We ultimately realized that it's very, very hard to get things done in this industry because there's really no company or media brand out there that's just focused on this. Stablecoins today are kind of thrown into this incredibly confusing pie with crypto broadly, and most of the research, data, media, consultants, like the whole industry has kind of, because it's had to, uh, come from this crypto first perspective, speculative first perspective. Um, but that's just a totally different, maybe some of the infrastructure behind that blockchain wise is shared, but the use case and the product market fit that a stablecoin based asset class brings is just completely different. The types of personas it attracts, the business models, the use cases that it enables, the value systems that these people hold. Like people aren't. We were talking with the M0 team, which we really look up to and love working with, both as a media sponsor and client, and they hold the belief, and I think I do as well, where we actually don't think people need to care about stablecoins, who are using them. Most of the volume eventually through these rails will be done with and by people who don't really even need to care or know that these things are happening on a blockchain versus a fiat rail. It's just going to be better, faster, and cheaper. But there are specifically people in the world of business who are now saying, hey, adopting stablecoins for my company is an existential crisis, because if I don't, I'm going to be slower, more expensive, and less relevant, and get disrupted. And so what we've seen happen over the last few months is that there's this massive professional class of people who are building products or working in teams or trying to make career changes or start new companies. And there's this really exciting industry momentum that's happening. But the problem is that there's still a ton of confusion because everything's put into this crypto wrapper. And so what we want to do from our perspective and what we want to stand for is just to be a stablecoin native, completely focused and obsessed company to help people navigate this conversation, and trying to really focus on that versus get distracted with, I think, a lot of the things that just the crypto industry more broadly, and there's definitely a place for it. Like there's nothing necessarily wrong with it. It's just payments and stablecoins are you even look at the Genius Act and it's written this way. Like it's just a very different use case. So I think for us, we want to put our flag down around that.
Yeah, that totally tracks. I do like, I do totally agree with the idea of, stablecoins should just work. People shouldn't have to know that they're using stablecoins. It should just enable something, at the end of the day, a better user experience for dollars. But anything can exist. There's this quote from Alan Watts that's like, I'm going to absolutely butcher it, but the gist is, when your eye is working, you don't really notice your eye. It's only when something's wrong with it that
That's good.
that you notice it's there, right? And I often think, like, if I had to explain to a car dealer how a carburetor worked before I was allowed to drive on the road, nobody would be driving their cars, right? And I think we need to implement that exact sort of like roadmap for stablecoins. They should just work. Yeah, no, that makes total sense. The other thing that struck me from what you guys were saying, the non-scalable ground and pound approach to this, right? Meeting people face to face, being in the room. I think I listened to an interview a while ago with Matt Hogan from Bitwise, and they were asking, how they were implementing their strategy, and he was like, it's guys on the road, meeting with people face to face, establishing trust, and it's just fundamentally not achievable in the same way through a Zoom call or a Gmeet or whatever. And I mean, our industry just goes out of its way to over automate absolutely everything, and there's just some human things that are non-scalable, but exponentially more effective, that I think that we're coming around to finally, and it sounds like you guys have already figured out and are doing right now.
Well, I'd say like the second tier to that even too is okay. We get it. It's hard. It's expensive to travel. It's time consuming. You go from Dubai to New York to to Colombia for the whatever next conference. Maybe you can't do that. What's the next best thing? Twitter Spaces, long form content, things where people can actually get to know you versus outside of a quick 2 to 3 sentence tweet. Kind of like, again, unfortunately, the highest leverage things you can do as a young startup are the least scalable, but they'll probably have the biggest impact. And that goes down to either building your personal brand, and that's done through, like I said, content. No other way.
Definitely. I know we're at the bottom of the hour. I want to be respectful of your time. I've got 1 or 2 more things that we could chat about, but if you want to call it here, we're good for that too.
Let's do it. I'm in.
I got a few more.
Amazing.
Minutes.
Cool. One of the big things, you guys have a new, Stable Studios also does the Stable Minded podcast, which is awesome. You've got season 4 coming out very shortly, I believe. And you got a bunch of like awesome guests on. We've hosted a few of them too, but it struck me like looking through the guest list, you guys really do cover the gamut of the entire stablecoin stack. I mean, M0 is creating the infra for spinning up new stables. Noble is an application built on M0 that is that's implementing RWAs through their stablecoins. Wormhole is the infra that moves it around. Cast is an end user use case. I guess like from your 30,000 foot viewpoint, like what is the most or among the most promising inroads for real, non-crypto stablecoin adoption? Everyone talks about stablecoins being crypto's killer use case, but what is that like? What is that going to look like when we have our, Angry Birds iPhone application moment, and that pendulum finally shifts?
That's a good question. So I will say, one, I love Cast. Just a big fan of everything Rags is doing. I use the Cast card weekly, just full disclaimer. And he's actually our first repeat guest on the podcast too, kind of getting to take 2 angles, because I think what he's actually building is so much bigger than what it looks like on the surface, with right now being a wallet with cool cards attached to it. Launching their own stablecoin is just the next evolution in what they're actually building. But the one episode that you didn't mention that I think is a big sleeper use case is Playtron. Like I said, they're on Sui, and so they'll actually be launching their own stablecoin completely for their gaming ecosystems. And then now you even talk about GTA 6. There's a lot of rumors spiraling around. Are they going to do their own token? I've even had random non-crypto friends reach out and say, "Hey, dude, are they going to do some like crypto thing here?" I'm like, it would make sense. There's already economies in GTA 5 and on these servers. To just have it built natively into the game makes so much more sense. And I think a stable coin probably makes more sense than a token to start, especially from a risk perspective. So that's actually the route that I think is kind of like a sleeper, under talked about narrative right now, just given how massive the gaming industry is, and kind of a different answer than just banking platform or moving money between the banks. That's kind of the one I'm interested to see how it's going to develop over the next year or 2.
One of the best podcasts. Well, I can't say this. I really, I really enjoyed this incredible conversation with Kurt McMaster. This episode isn't released yet, but it's exactly, Zach, what you're talking about. This is one. He's just an incredible founder. Started Boost Mobile. I think we've all heard that name. And he sold it, and he's now building a company called Playtron, which is, I'm not a massive gamer, so I'm not super aware of this, but Playtron is one of the largest gaming organizations, or the most prominent like game developer studios. And working with M0, they've announced all this. I think it's called the Game Dollar, if I'm remembering this correctly, or Game OS or something. And we really dove into this, and for that exact use case. So not just for a single game, but for their entire gaming studio. They come out with a bunch of different games, sort of like a network effect. They're using this core infrastructure, all built with stablecoins that they've issued in partnership with M0. So now that payment rail that used to be a cost center can turn into a revenue center for them. And users and gamers don't really need to care. They can just move value around the world super efficiently, and can do this, I'm sure, using a variety of different automated tools and levers. And it's just a really cool use case. But yeah, I think the goal of the podcast, going back, I think to part of the question, is to really help people contextualize what's going on. That's kind of how we approach these seasons. You'll notice that we do things by season. So we'll pick, really work strategically with the season sponsor to really understand their business, their strategic goals, how they think about the world, who they partner with, who their customers are, and then really highlight all of that to the world through a season. And M0 is a great example of that, where you kind of get a little flavor of like the end user applications, the assets themselves, folks like Cast and Inflatron who are building real like kind of utility on top of them versus Usual and Noble, which are focused really on the asset side. So we like to take that approach. We have some really exciting seasons. We have 2 of them already kind of slated and ready to go, but that is the goal. We're trying to really bring this, add context. There's a value, I think, of having a third party doing that as objectively as possible, versus the company themselves doing that in more of a first party, what feels like kind of an advertising marketing kind of thing. I think it's great to have more players like what we're doing here, like Stable Studios being, some like thoughtful third parties. I think the space needs more of that.
Agreed. I love that you guys brought up gaming, because I was going to ask where a current blind spot is in terms of adoption. Like, what's the sleeper? What is the sleeper use case that no one sees coming? And I think gaming's perfect. It's also like there's an opportunity here. Everyone's been twiddling their thumbs in crypto, waiting for this gaming narrative to take off, and it would be almost poetic if stablecoins enabled gaming and gaming enabled stablecoins, and there was this confluence of these 2 metas that really triggered something exponential in stablecoins. Anecdotally, I also, as soon as they paused or they kicked back the release of GTA 6, I was like, they got to be doing something with crypto or AI, like implementing something pretty big into the game, and decided it was worth holding off. So my tinfoil hat on that, like, my spidey senses totally align. And I have also, I've decided I'm going to be sick and out of office for at least 5 days when that thing comes out. As the last trailer is unbelievable. It's gonna be awesome. Awesome, cool. The last question that I had for you guys, I'm gonna keep this tight for sure, because like I said, we're a little bit over, but I really wanted to get your take on, you put a tweet out a few days ago, Drew, Zach, I believe it was your tweet, about sort of adoption and growth of non-USD based stablecoins in the market. And I'm a bit of 2 minds of this, as I see eventually every nation state, probably a lot of banks, are going to run these stablecoin experiments. But one of the things we talk about is like everybody wants to hold US dollars globally. It's sort of like a universal standard of value preservation. And what's your long-term outlook on the viability of alternate stablecoins to USD backed stablecoins on a global scale? Like, can they compete? Can they thrive outside of regulatory insulation in specific countries where they mandate payments? What's your broader perspective of what that looks like in the next probably 2-3 years, a little bit longer term?
All I'll say on this real quick, Zach, and I'll pass it to you, is this is a perfect example of a podcast season we're thinking through. So if anyone hears this and they're looking to be a part of this, this is a perfect example of what a season could be, right? Where we say, hey, let's, just because it's top of mind. I was messaging these guys earlier, Schumann Financial, MiCA compliant Euro stablecoin. Been talking with them for a while. I think it could be really cool to just let's meet with all of the top non-USD stablecoin projects, get a grip on what are they seeing, what are they doing, and just expose that, because you're probably going to see there's another company, Minteo in Colombia and certain parts of Latin America. I think the localized economies is like we're not going to be the best people to answer this because we're in the US and it's less relevant for us to care about. But there's definitely a case to be made for localized regions of the world to have the same rails that something like a USD provides, but just with a native asset that's known to them and that they are already used to holding their value in. But I think this is an area for me that I personally would love to learn more about. That's kind of the best part of this job is you can just kind of
Yeah.
learn and continue to produce. So it's a great question. Zach, what do you think?
So I'll just say first, like this is just totally anecdotal, subjective. Dave, you mentioned like your spidey sense. Like I can remember my spidey sense kind of tingling when I had left Rise and I was like, oh, I'm gonna like start writing about something. At first, I was gonna do B2B crypto projects, and then something just told me, I think stable coins are about to kind of reach their like mainstream moment. I don't have that 100% feeling with euros, or non-USD stable coins, but I have a very similar feeling where it's like, I don't think people are talking about this enough. And I think mostly it comes to I don't see it as much as a consumer play, at least to start. I think it'll follow a very similar growth track to we saw with USD stablecoins, where it's like, hey, I just need these because I'm moving tons of money around the world. They're especially when you look at the size of the global forex market, and even like what Drew said, the money moving in and out of these countries. One of the large use cases at Rise was actually people just wanting to get paid in USD so they could off ramp to their local currency because the forex rates were better. I think we're going to see a similar trend there where the forex rates are going to be better for them to go from, moving money on chain from maybe USDC to Colombian peso stablecoin, and then going and off ramping from there and seeing local markets get involved. So it's definitely young. I did a post about it, and when you go, it's even hard to find the data right now. Some of these non-USD stablecoins have less than $1 million market cap. But it's definitely one of the things I'm watching closely because I think it'll kind of sneak up on people because the infrastructure is there now. It's just 3 years ago it was, hey, okay, infrastructure is having to be developed. We're not there yet. Now we're getting to a place where, okay, infrastructure's there. Now we just got to bring the stablecoin.
Yeah, that all makes a ton of sense. It will be really, really interesting to see what happens over the next couple of years specifically, especially
I
going
think
back to.
I think it'll only be with maybe GBP, the euro. Euro's already the massive leader in the space, and it's only going to be probably a handful, or it's going to be, or the other thing it's going to be is just going to be in very specific markets.
Yeah, I definitely see that. Cool. Amazing. Before we close out, is there anything else you guys wanted to mention or to call out before we close her up?
M0 episode's out now. That just came out yesterday. So head to Stable Minded YouTube or Spotify. And then Drew, you got anything?
We also had a really amazing conversation with Ryan Sachs, the founder, CEO of Eco. This was a part of our second season, I believe, but that was a really, really great episode. And just thank you to the Eco team. We're excited for what you guys are doing. I think you hold the same priorities that we do around making this stuff really simple and keeping the really keeping the tech behind the scenes and really focusing on the true real utility of what this provides and speaking the language of what people care about, which is often not the tech. It's more of how does this make my life better? I think you guys definitely seem to be realizing that. Also just shout out to Ryan. I think Zach and I, in many ways, our business is entering this conversation as it's becoming very prominent and very loud, but just Eco and Ryan and just the journey of the years that you guys have been building and the toil of going through the Biden administration and the Project Choke Point or Operation Choke Point, just all that stuff. It's a really, really great episode for people who maybe don't have the context for how hard it was to be a stablecoin founder just a couple of years ago. So that's another great one too.
Last shout
Thank you.
out. Yield bearing hat, Department of Agriculture. I love it. I love the concept.
Nice.
And pushing the boundaries on what's possible.
Do you guys have your hat yet? Did you guys get hats?
Yes, I did get mine. I got mine last
Did
week.
you guys work with IYK on that? We also did. Shout out to
Bobby,
IYK.
Amazing. Yeah. That was all Bobby Thacker's brainchild. He put that together and shipped it. It's been awesome. I'm in Spain, so I don't have my hat yet, so I'm still suffering FOMO. But Bobby has assured me it's on the way. So yeah, I'm stoked to get mine.
Maybe future collab there, because I like the crowdsource liquidity for Stable Studios merch V2.
I have so many, I think that model, totally, this is just me talking, but I think that model is totally scalable, and there's a massive project in where wearables and building brands around it and different incentive programs that you can run. So yeah, we should jam on that after.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, listen, thank you. This has been a fantastic conversation. I really appreciate you guys going over. Zach, Drew, thank you for your time. Let's do this again in a couple of months. And I look forward to season 4 of Stable Minded.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate the time.
Cheers, guys. Have a good afternoon.